Hi, it's Nicky, and thank you so much for stopping by, because it's really hard to find a podcast to listen to these days, isn't it? Not. I think you'll like this though. It's called Be Someone, Not Everyone, and you're going to meet some really, really fascinating people. I'm not looking for super famous people, so don't think that Cher's going to come and sit next door to me. Well, she might, who knows? But what I were looking for is people that have had a life, had a bit of adversity, and come out all the better for it. So get yourself a pot of tea, sit yourself down, and I hope you enjoy it. See you in a bit. Can't tell you how many times I've clicked flipping record and not actually, I haven't clicked record halfway through.
My name is Phill Dean. I'm the Shoreditch sketcher.
HIYA. Well, here we are again. We see you jumping in there, and that is because you used to be my boss, didn't you, Phil?
I did back in the day.
So
we spent a lot of time in cars going up and down the country, didn't we?
Oh yeah, we did, and I have to say, clearly we're not going to do an introduction here. This is Phill Dean, my old boss, now cult sketcher, but you'll find out who he is in a bit. And before you say anything else, isn't it funny how people are just pivotal in your people in your past are pivotal to where you are now? Because before we talk about what we did at the attic, you freaking saved me. There is no question, because you accepted my insanity and I was like a banshee when I were at the attic. No question of that. And I used to do everything that I used to do in an hour a day. I don't know if you actually realise that. But when people thought I were upstairs, I'd be up at cafe. When they thought I were downstairs, I'd be walking around town. Because I used to do what we did in an hour a day, but I were absolutely insane, and you just accepted me for who I was. And one day, I can't even remember, I'm going to let you speak in a minute, but I'd done some really crazy stuff, and you'd just bought me a new BMW, and somebody had put me into wall, and it was literally 2 days old. And I'm going, hey, guess what I've done now? You won't believe what I've done now. And you goes, yeah, go on, tell me. You won't remember this. And I said, I've just smashed car. It's only 2 days old. I was nuts, everybody. I was nuts. And you just said, right, give me keys. And I gave you keys, and you said, there'll be an HIYA car there in an hour. When will you realise that no matter what you do, I'll always keep you because you're brilliant. Go sit down and get on with it. Can you remember that?
I don't remember that, no, but there was so many things. It was a crazy time, wasn't it? But there was always an energy there when you were in the building, Nicky. That energy that you delivered, where you used to run up and down the stairs. I don't know if you remember when you get a meeting. You get us a meeting somewhere really impossible, like I've got you a meeting at Nike, and you come running up the stairs, or you come running downstairs screaming, I've got a meeting with Nike, and the entire agency kind of fed off that excitement, I think, and it felt really normal to me. But obviously, I've worked with other people since, and I've since realised what a special talent that is, to be able to kind of like just switch on that energy and be focused to deliver and get excited and get enthusiastic. It's just kind of not a normal thing. It's not what normal people do. So I think at the time, it just seemed like it was part of the course, but little did we know we were doing something really, really special, weren't we?
Yeah, and all that stuff has created what I'm doing now, and a little bit what you're doing now. But we talked a bit before this, and you're saying it looked normal. We actually orchestrated every wink of the eye, every wave of the hand. And it was all done on email, 6 weeks in advance, like you said, Nike, all those people that we got a lot of business with. it was all, when we met them, every word, every piece of body language, what we wore, everything was orchestrated, even though we made it look like it was just like everyday stuff. So from that time, and seeing as I've got you there, from that time, which for you was the most pivotal moment that told you where you were going now? If you look back, what was it that you can go, do you know what, if it hadn't been for that, I wouldn't be doing this?
It's a really good question. I think there was a few pivotal moments for me. I think the most pivotal moment was actually starting to work at Attic, the agency where we both worked together. Because prior to that, I was in a really safe, steady job with another agency, and I'll probably be still there now, you know. But having the sort of courage to take up that role with an agency that was dramatically different from the agency that I was working in, and was kind of crazy in lots of different ways, but exciting, and it was dangerous, and all those things. And I think it was about 30, early 30s, maybe 35, something like that. So it was a big move for me, but it felt like a move that I had to make. I've realised that through my life, I've probably done this about 3 or 4, maybe 5 times, where I've had to put myself, you know, in harm's way almost. You know, put myself into a kind of out of my comfort zone and into something that's going to challenge me. And I think that pivotal moment was joining Attic. And I think during the time at Attic, there was a number of pivotal moments where I grew as a person, I think, and I was doing things that I'd never ever done before. One point was one of the directors had been asked to speak at the Berlin Film Festival, and he had to pull out because of another kind of commitment. And so somebody came up to me and said, the PR girl came up to me and said, "Look, do you fancy going to the Berlin Film Festival and speaking?" And I went, "Yeah." And I didn't know what I was speaking about, but I just knew that it was the Berlin Film Festival, and I had to do it. You know, I had to do it, and 100%. You know, that there was an atmosphere of taking risks there. You know, which I absolutely loved, and you know, I went to the Berlin Film Festival and spoke in front of 1,000 people. You know, it's talking about the agency that we were in, creativity in general, just talking about how to sort of push yourself forward as an individual. And that for me was a pivotal moment, because that kind of, when I think back, when I describe that to people, they go, "Really? That's crazy." And I'm like, yeah, at the time it didn't seem that crazy. I just kind of felt like I had to do it. You know, I had to take those risks. And there's a number of different situations where those risks, those kind of creative risks, or those personal risks to yourself, it's good to get yourself out there, and you know, it keeps you on your toes. And you know, the key moments for me, those.
Where do you think that those risks come from, or those opportunities? Because you've just made me think, my first speaking gig you sent me to, it was a similar thing. You should have been speaking in somewhere, it was Bradford or Dewsbury or somewhere, and you said, "I can't go, you're going," and you sent me on that Friday, and I spoke to 15 people, and from that came the speaking career. Yeah. And I would never, ever have done it, I don't think, if you hadn't sent me. Where does them opportunities come from, Phill? Is it fate? Is it God? Do we make it happen from our head, from our heart? Or does it just happen? And if it just happens, why does it happen to some people and not to others?
Well, that's a really good question. That's a very...
I'm bloody full of them.
It's a deep question, isn't it? I mean, I think my personal view is, I think that these opportunities happen because you make them happen by the situation that you're in, and you kind of, you know, by putting yourself out there, by getting yourself known for certain things, that you get those opportunities. And you know, whether you believe in fate or whether you believe in sort of a higher sort of spiritual kind of being, you know, that could be the situation. But you've got, I think fundamentally, you've got to put yourself in those situations. You've got to put your head above the parapet and see what's going on, so that people go, you know what, I'd be up for that. Oh, I think I think he's really good. And you know, the more you challenge yourself, the better you get at that. And when that speaking thing I did in Berlin didn't turn into a speaking career for me, but what it did give me was that kind of confidence in my own ability to think on my feet, to connect with people, to try to be engaging, and I think that's something that's really helped me in subsequent agency roles. That experience you get from dealing with people, actually being unafraid of the kind of the CEO of a large corporation. I mean, that's the thing that you taught me, Nick, is that that everybody's a human being, and don't put people on pedestals, and just treat people as people, and you'll never go wrong really with that. And I think that's something that you pick up from getting yourself out there.
But we're brought up, aren't we, to have this, oh my God, he's a director, oh my God, he's a manager, oh my God, he's CEO. And that's put into our hard drive all the time growing up. So it's quite a difficult thing to shake off. But I'll tell you what we used to do, and I've talked about it a lot. It's like a massive part of what I do now. And again, all this time, when I worked at the Attic, I will log in mentally and actually writing things down of how I did it. How I used to send an email to, God, can you remember when we met the global marketing director for Nike? And then when we went to Diageo, we got was it £500,000 worth of business, pounds, not euros? All this. It was like just created with words. And I learned something from there that I think is good for everybody. Everybody, no matter what you do, can learn from it. If you're in a service industry, can you remember when we did all that business with Rolls-Royce? And we worked with Russ Colston, who I am still friends with today. He was brand manager. And one day I said to him, Russ, why did you work with us and not anybody else? Because you get 100 people a week trying to get into your agency. And he just looked at me and he goes, I can absolutely answer you. He said, because all the time we were speaking to you and Phil, you two told us what it would be like to have you in our world. Because when you get to our level, it's much of a muchness. To be good is a given. It makes no difference. They're all bloody good. It's just a different kind of good. But you told us how we would feel when in your presence. And I never forgot that. And that is now a massive part of my shtick, just finding all those little elements and tweaking them to make them emotionally resonant. So you're very clear what people feel.
Yeah, and I think that, I think I think the secret to that approach was, people wanting to be in our club, to be in our gang, so I think that, as you say, you've got to deliver, so fundamentally we've got to be able to deliver, kind of amazing creative work and brilliant ideas. But then at that level, you expect somebody could do that. The difference is that kind of human element, and I think that I always remember the little details for me that kind of come out of that, which was, you always used to say, right, just before we get out of the car, they're going to be watching us. Somebody's going to be watching us get out of the car. So the show starts the minute you get out of the car, and you're kind of laughing, you're joking. I still do versions of that now to this very day. So it's a bit like the minute you walk through the store in reception and there's a receptionist there, that's part of the deal. The receptionist will definitely talk to the marketing director. Do you know what I mean? They're all kind of in the. So you just, you treat them, you treat them really nicely, and you chat them up, and you have a bit of a laugh and a giggle with them. And there were the little details for me that I think we used to get absolutely bang right, and I think other people don't do that. They roll into the reception, they route to the receptionist, they route to the guy on the door, and it's. We want them to be in our gang, and so that when we want that gang to look attractive, and we want it to be interesting, and kind of I'd love to be part of that world,
I call that concept now functional family, and the body language, everything, the body language, even the way you look at each other, the subliminal touching. Anybody that's bought any of my stuff or seen me speak, I'll understand what I'm talking about. But everything, because we're pack animals, and you're absolutely right, all we did was bring people into our family because, and particularly when you get to the level of some of the people we were working with, you can get to be a little bit lonely. So it was definitely the detail. And again, thanks, because I've had a really successful speaking career. on all of that. And I can actually tell the stories as they happened, because, you know, I can absolutely remember every single word, every wink of the eye, every wave of the hand that got us that £1 million worth of business a year. And we just made it look easy. But all that time were going on, and I didn't even know you could bloody draw.
It's really odd, because over the years, I mean, I went to art college, and you know, I started off as a graphic designer. So, you know, and actually back in those days, it was pre-computer, so it was all drawing. So we did a lot of physical drawing, and the ability to draw was something that I've always had since I was a kid. And it was just pure chance that I managed to, you know, I went in to see the careers advisor at school. I was just a kid off a council estate in Leeds, you know, and he said, "What can you do?" And I said, "I can draw." So he says, "Right, you can go to art college then." I said, "Well, what's that?" Nobody told me about art college, you know, in working class Leeds. And I think, you know, and back then it was graphic designers weren't really, they were called commercial artists, you know, so graphic designers were just becoming a thing. So I've always been able to draw, and that's always been a big part of my life. And I guess over the years, it's sort of ebbed and flowed really with whatever was going on in my life. And, you know, so I think probably at the time we were working together, that probably didn't have the bandwidth to kind of get to do much drawing. Well, I've done some in the background, because, you know, since I kind of retired as a kind of an active graphic designer, and moved more into managerial, sort of creative director, managing director, then the physical act of drawing has become more of a recreational thing as opposed to a, you know, kind of a professional thing. So kind of on and off over the years, I've always drawn, but really in the last, you know, 5, 6, 7 years, it's really come to the fore, and it's taken on a life of its own.
Yeah, just before we talk about that, talking about life of its own, you did something at 50 that most of your mates in Leeds must have looked at you and thought you were going through a very strange time. What did you do, you and your Julie? Well,
it was interesting, because I'd come off the back of, I'd just been working in a big PLC, running a creative services division for a you know, FTSE 200 PLC group. And it didn't end particularly well, because I ended up getting kind of sidelined. There was a lot of political shenanigans in those. And actually, whilst I did enjoy it and I learned a lot from it, I kind of vowed I wouldn't do that again. And I was doing 6 months garden leave off the back of it, and thinking, right, what's my next play? What's my next move? And I've been spending quite a bit of time in London working with the PLC, and I've been enjoying it. And I always had a bit of a love-hate relationship with London. I would love going to London and visiting, doing the attractions, going to meetings. But then sometimes, you know, with the travel and you're away from home and all those sort of things. And eventually, I was asked to run a kind of a London office, and it wasn't a particularly good experience. And I kind of like, so London left a bit of a sour taste in my mouth. But I really enjoyed it with the PLC, and I was doing 3 days a week there. And so I started talking to Julie. I said to Julie, you know, kind of what way we were going to weigh up what we were doing next. And I'd got some offers from some other agencies, and I thought, well, do I just go back and do what I've just done? And I was kind of I had the appetite for doing something a bit bold and a bit dramatic. I'd just turned 50. I'd got my first tattoo. I was doing a whole bunch of things. That were kind of scary for me, and I felt like I had to do some things that would challenge me again, because I got to 50, and a lot of my contemporaries were sort of in a way started to settle down. You know, a couple of my mates were like, "Oh, well, I'm going to retire at 55," and all that sort of stuff. And I'm like, "Well, I'm not into that. You know, I don't feel 50." So we sort of started talking about a move to London, and obviously there's nothing holding us back, because both our kids were growing up at university and working, and we didn't really see much of them because they were kind of different parts of the country. And we were kind of going, right, what's next? And Julie, we were talked about it. Julie was just really up for it, and she'd got to bear in mind, Julie probably been to London about 5 times in her entire life. So I spent a lot of time in London. So for me, it was less of a risk, but for Julie, it was a massive risk. You know, in lots of ways, she made the bolder decision, because she was kind of like, well, I've never been to London much, you know, but let's give it a go. So what I did was I spoke to an agency and just said, look, you know, how about we we trial a London office for your agency. So it was an agency that was up north, and they were up for it. And obviously I knew them and they knew me, and I just said, look, let's trial it for a year because I'm not sure if it's going to work out. I mean, I've never lived in London, and so Julie and I kind of, we packed up our stuff, but all our friends, I've got to say, kind of not to our face per se, but we know that they were saying it to each other, was like, they'll be back. They said they'll be back in 6 months. They won't kind of, they won't last it. Now we didn't know they were saying that, and not many people said it to us. They were all just kind of going, wow, incredibly brave move, and all the rest. For us, it just felt like a thing that we were just going to be on a bit of fun with, have a bit of a play around. So we rented a flat in the coolest part of London because I just figured out that if we're going to move to London, I want to be in the coolest bit. So we got a flat in Shoreditch, right in the thick of kind of East End, restaurants, bars, pubs, all that kind of stuff. And I'd never lived in a city before, and it was the most exciting thing that we both ever experienced. I was working in this agency. Julie ended up working. She was working in a school up in Yorkshire. So she ended up working in this kind of a Whitechapel all girls school called the Mulberry Academy, and there was 1,000. I think it was all Bangladeshi girls school, and she was on the front line of everything really, and she was getting on buses, and I mean it was just an incredible experience for us, and we very quickly fell in love with the London lifestyle, and it was we were going out, we were tourists, we were living there, but what the main thing for me was that when you live in London, you have a very different relationship with it. You've actually got to engage with the city to really get the most from it. We put all our stuff in storage up in Leeds, and we just moved down and just kind of almost our mindset was, let's just do something brand new, and it was so energizing.
You seem interesting. Because I get it. Before lockdown, I was going to spend extended time in LA and Malibu. And you know what? I'm not dead yet. I'm a little bit older than you. I'm 62. And most of my friends are going, oh, do you know what? I'll have grandkids for a couple of days and I'll retire. Never. And it just says to me that everything is real, if that's what you think, and nothing is real. Because you are exactly what you think you are. And I would move to LA when I was 92 if I thought that was the thing to do. But, you do expand by it. I can see you, we've met for a drink in London. You and Julie have expanded by that experience because, you expand into your environment, and your environment gives you different things. So tell us about when you started sketching properly then.
I guess I was inspired by my surroundings, So when we were going all around London, we spent a lot of time walking the streets and just getting inspired and excited by the buildings, and I picked up my sketchbook probably for the first time in, I don't know, 10 years, probably something like that. And I just kind of thought, I just started doing a bit of a noodle and stuff, and some of my early sketches. We're pretty rusty, so sketching is like a muscle that you've got to exercise, and you don't exercise it too much, then you lose you can lose your technique a little bit. But it quickly became sketch journals almost were kind of like a story of our life in London, and I'm on book number 35 now, and each book sort of tells a story of that particular period of our lives in London, and what we were doing and what we were thinking, and I think fundamentally the sketching is linked to the excitement and the energy of the city. I'm not saying that wouldn't have happened in Leeds, because I've done plenty of sketching in Leeds, but in London there is so much, there is so much to sketch in a major international city. So you don't get the same in LA, or you get the same in New York. I think that just excited me, and it kind of reignited the kind of the sketching spark and the love of it. So I would take my sketchbook everywhere with me. So it's always in my bag, and I'd be sketching. I'd be sketching anything. I'd be sketching in a pub, in a bar, in a restaurant. I'd be sketching on the train or on the tube or on the bus. So I was just keen to kind of capture these these stories, the London stories, as I'm kind of walking around the city. And I was inspired by, I went to see meet an artist, and he had a whole bunch of sketchbooks piled up on his desk. And it was in a kind of an old mill in sort of in the East End. And he had all these sketchbooks, and they all stuff stuck inside them, like things he'd seen and all sorts of. I thought, actually, that look really cool, those books. So I wonder if I could kind of do something like that with my sketchbooks. So I'm a big believer in sort of like being inspired by what other people have done and other people have created. So I just started sketching everything I saw, and it's amazing when you sketch, you are almost invisible in some ways. There's a really interesting thing that goes on, where you really take in the scene. If I look back at a sketch, I can remember how I felt that day. I can remember the smells, the sounds, even things that happened that particular day, events that have affected me in some way. So there's something about the sketching process that does something interesting to your mind.
Who does the sketching? Is it Phill Dean, or is it the Shoreditch? I can't even bloody say it. Shoreditch sketcher. Who is it that does that?
Well, it's interesting. It's a really good question, that, because I kind of created the Shoreditch sketch as a bit of a kind of a fun alter ego almost, primarily for like Instagram. Because when obviously you need a kind of snappy hashtag and a snappy kind of name on there, and I quite like the alliteration of Shoreditch sketcher. But I do like the idea that the Shoreditch sketcher is a kind of the alter ego of Phill Dean. So I mean, Phill Dean is the kind of the guy that runs an agency and it does a whole bunch of things. But Shoreditch sketcher allows me to be very focused on what I'm doing, and building a brand almost for Shoreditch sketcher is really kind of what's happened over the last 5 years. I mean, a lot of people refer to me as Shoreditch sketcher, so I kind of feel like it's stuck, but it's very much I think that way when I'm in Shoreditch sketcher mode.
Now that is really interesting, because I mean, I don't think you've ever seen me speak, but there is a particular look, and I wouldn't have dreamt of doing this in a coloured t-shirt, because I always have to be in black, the eyelashes, the hair. When I'm working, there is a particular look, and I can totally. It's no different to Beyonce doing what she does, doing what we do. It's just that she will change the way that 20,000 people feel about themselves and about the world in a 1 hour gig period. We would do it, I would do it, particularly when I'm working in retail. I do a lot of retail training. You change the way that people feel one by one by one, but when you get to the end of your life, you've done 20-odd thousand without a question. But you become that person when you give all those tells to yourself. And, obviously we're just talking now, and me, it's a different person with different skills than when I'm on a stage. And it must be the same with you. When you're not in Shoreditch sketcher mode, is the qualities that he would see and feel and find that go into those pictures that Phill Dean doesn't access in the same way?
Yeah, it's an interesting thought, actually. What I really liked about the idea of kind of creating almost a Shoreditch sketcher persona was it allowed me to behave in a different way. I had this notion that when I came to London, I thought, well, nobody knows me here. And actually, that's the wonderful thing about a city, any big city. If you move to it, you can be who you want to be. And I really like the idea of, doing things in a different way. Wearing different clothes, being more ostentatious. I mean, I went to there's a really amazing shop called Child of the Jago. I don't know if you've heard of it. And it's Vivian Westwood's son. Actually, that's his shop. Yeah. And they sell these amazing hats. And actually, Boy George wears quite a lot of those hats. Have you been?
Yeah.
And I
bought
myself
actually.
Really? Oh yeah, It's amazing. It's a fabulous brand. So I bought myself a hat, because somebody said to me, well, "You're an artist, so you're going to need a hat." And I thought, right, I'm going to get a crazy hat. And it's not like I would wear it all the time when I'm sketching, but I would wear it when I was out and about in Shoreditch and kind of hackney. And I love the idea that you could, change your persona, for the better. You could choose to be a different a different type of person when you were doing something else. And I really like that. And because I don't think I'm a fundamentally outgoing person. I can be when I want to be, but when when I did a gallery show about 2 or 3 years ago, and allowed that. I was showing it sketcher then, it's a really interesting question, that I think. But this alter ego sounds a bit dramatic. It's not. But it just allows you to inhabit another persona that helps you get where you want to get
and access more qualities. I once read a brilliant piece, and it was saying that in New York, the reason why a lot of the immigrants had been so hugely successful is that they moved to a place and it were a blank canvas and nobody knew them. Yeah. So if they messed up, it didn't matter because nobody knew them. And we can possibly really see that, can't we? How that will be just from what you've said. So
I love that.
Yeah. There's a thought. I'll have to do a separate little film about that, actually, one of these old days. Right, note to self. So when I look at your pictures, which I was doing this morning, and I always look at you've got a massive following on Instagram, but every single one of those buildings have got a different energy, and you feel different in the presence of every single drawing. So I'm interested in, what's your relationship with that building at that time? Do you see the 21st century, or do you see Victorian times or Tudor times, or wherever that building first originated? What do you feel when you look at those buildings, and how do you capture it? Because you absolutely do, in a way that words could never say.
No, I think it's really. First thing I do when I look at a building is I do fundamentally sort of see the history, and I'm always kind of touched by the people that have lived there, the things that the building has seen and the building's experienced. I'm not sure. Does a building have a soul? I think that was kind of a question that you asked. So I fundamentally try to tap into what the essence of the building is. So when I'm drawing, just as I do when I'm trying to draw people, people and buildings are, for me, they're the same. But I think when you look, you see the detail. You look at the architectural style. You really get a sense of it, and in a way that a photograph could never do. A lot of the commissions that I do are people say you've really captured the essence of that scene or that neighborhood or that building or that person. Sometimes you capture a quick sketch of a building. For me, is infinitely better than a quick snap on Instagram. And I think that's the reason why my Instagram following has just gone through the roof, because people see photographs every single day. Everyone's got a camera, so sketching is about trying to capture something that a camera can't capture. And so when you've got something like the Tower of London, you are surrounded by history. That's a building that's been there for over 1,000 years. But then in the same sense that you might I might sketch a brand new place, where you've got all the shiny glass and steel, and what's the story of that building. So I'm always thinking for that, and I'm always looking for the interesting, the history, what's that building trying to tell me, or what's that scene saying to me. And sometimes you capture something kind of inadvertently. I tend not to think. I'm very instinctive the way I draw, so I'll see a scene and say, actually, I think that'll work. I'll draw it. So a lot of it is instinct. A lot of it is me just kind of going, what, that's going to really work. I think that's going to be really nice. And often when you look at a building that you think is horrible or ugly or ramshackle or run down, the sketch of it captures something of it that you wouldn't have normally seen.
What creates the essence, the architect or the people that have lived there?
I think it's a unique combination. I think some architects have got incredible vision. So if you look at some of the world famous architects like Christopher Wren or Nicholas Hawksmoor, the buildings that they created, like Christchurch at Spitalfields or St Paul's Cathedral, incredibly beautiful buildings. But they're buildings they're made and designed for people to inhabit and for people to use. And I think that's always sometimes I love a building that's just beautiful and there's no people around it, but often people give it that sense of place. It's a bit like during lockdown, I've been walking around London, and London's been like an empty stage set, you know, incredible, beautiful building, all the buildings that I've been loving, but there's something missing, and that's the people, you know. So the people are the kind of the actors on the stage. And, you know, during lockdown, you know, what that really struck me when I was out and about, seeing all these beautiful buildings, but no people, no context. So I think it's a unique combination of the vision of the architect, and then sometimes people change the vision of the architect, don't they? They make the building their own, or they make the architecture their own, and I think that's when it becomes really interesting.
I love that people are the actors on a stage, you know, and I love that. It's almost like it's therapeutic for you, just the way your voice goes when you're talking about it. And now, I mean, you actually teach groups of people to sketch, am I right?
I do.
So
yeah, I do.
Tell me about what happens to those people, because there must be some kind of therapy. You must find out a lot about yourself when you are creating. 1 minute there's nothing, the next minute there's something that came out of your heart. Tell me about the people.
So there's a lot of talk at the moment, isn't there, about mindfulness and about being in the moment, and sketching delivers that absolutely in spades. You know, so one thing that I read Ruby Wax's brilliant book called Frazzled, which is about the brain and what the brain does and how the brain works. And it turns out that part of the brain that worries and gets depressed can't function when you're drawing, or when you're creating art, or doing something creative, because the unique combination of your brain and your hands is it doesn't allow your brain to worry about stuff as much as you could. And I've noticed that. So I've been noticing, you know, when I'm sketching, I'm not thinking about anything. I'm not actually thinking about my next meeting. I'm not worrying about this presentation I've got to do, or whatever. So I kind of noticed that there's a state of mind which is quite neutral. You're focusing on the job at hand, you're translating what you're seeing onto paper. And what I've noticed is when I'm running workshops with people, we did one on a rooftop in East London, and there was chatting to begin with, and then we got settled down to do the first sketch, and then it was absolute silence for like an hour. Nobody talking. They'll chit chat, pass me their pencil or whatever, but people were just sat and really just kind of in the moment doing it, you know. And we did another session after that, and then this girl at the end came up to me and she just said, "You know what?" She said, "I've not looked at my phone for 2 hours." And she said, "I can't remember the last time I didn't look at my phone for 2 hours." And I say that to people all the time. It's like, this is your time for you to just be in the moment, to do something that's analog. You know, you're not checking your social media. You're not online. You're not on your phone. What you're doing is you're just kind of doing something very natural. And that sense of mindfulness. I've run every session I've run. That's been the real thread that comes through. These are people that are. One guy was a busy city lawyer, and he just said, "I hate my job, but I'd love to do something like this," you know. And a lot of people say to me, "Well, I can't draw," and I'm like, "Yes, you can draw. I really can draw." And it's about understanding. You know, you don't have to do something that's photographically accurate. You know, what you're doing is you're doing your interpretation of that scene, and it's giving people permission to be creative, to actually express themselves in another way. And obviously there's lots of different ways of doing that, but that's been the thing for me. And I use my sketching and my art as a obviously it is a kind of a commercial business right now, but the flip side of that is giving myself that ability to do something creative and inaccurate and messy, because I think if you give yourself that permission to do messy, you know, that's okay, because you can still do the tiny stuff. So there's a mindfulness is the kind of the key thing for me.
Yeah, I can imagine how. I suppose the word is fulfilling that must be for you, knowing you, because you're elevating all those people, but you're actually using art to connect people to themselves. And that's, for me, is one of the things these days. You know, most of the people that I work with, the first thing you've got to do is connect them to themselves, because they're so full of this crap. you know, that it means nothing, that they actually don't know who they are anymore. So there must be an element that when you're doing that and you're in that moment, you actually start to drop into who you really are, which you can't finish one of those sessions coming out being the same person, surely.
No. And you know, what was really nice was we, you know, kind of afterwards we'd all get together, we'd look at everybody's work, and you kind of be going, look at, oh, looked amazing. It was all amazing. You know, it was all really, really interesting, great friend. And afterwards we all sat down and we had lunch together and a couple of glasses of wine, and you know, we were just kind of, you know, everyone was total strangers, but they're all talking, all kind of shared experience, a common experience of kind of discovering that they can do something that, you know, they haven't got that ability to sketch. And I get a lot of people saying that to me on Instagram, that, you know, I've inspired people to pick up a sketchbook and a pen for the first time in 10 years or whatever. I get so much of that, and I mean, that's, for me, that's incredibly satisfying, because that's the journey that I was on, you know. And people are hungry, I think, for this kind of experience, you know, because but particularly during lockdown, I mean, I did a couple of kind of online sessions with people, you know, kind of live Instagram live video sessions, chatting to people and answering questions, and people are kind of hungry for that level, that kind of engagement.
Yeah, because everything is so quick and our concentration times are going less and less and less, again, because of that. And we want instant gratification, but with what you do, there's no such thing, because it's something that unfolds. Tell us about your book.
I was approached by a publisher last year, big global publishing house. And
was that a shock? What did you feel like when bloody letter dropped through letterbox?
Well, I kind of took, you know, it was a bit weird, because I kind of took it in my stride, because I thought, well, you obviously see me on Instagram, you know. I was shocked and I was flattered, actually. I was quite flattered. I thought, well, I need to go see them first, because I'd been approached about a year before by another publisher, and I turned them down, because at the time I didn't feel like I could do it. You know, I actually didn't think, I can't write a book. You know, I can't write a book. I haven't got the time, and you know what I've got to say and all the rest of it. So, but by the time the second invite came through, I went to meet with my publisher, Ellie, and she just said, look, we've seen your work. We want to work with you. You're our first choice. We want you to write a book on urban sketching, on urban drawing. And we want this book to be to help people get started drawing and take them on a journey. And I was a bit scared, if I'm honest. I was a bit nervous about it, because I thought, right, okay, well, can I do this? You know, physically, did I have the time to do it? Do you know what I mean? Could I fit it in? And then, you know, was I capable? You know, was I good enough? You know, but I have to say, I quickly came to the conclusion that I had to do it, because it felt like another pivotal moment for me. You know, we've had a few of these pivotal moments we've been talking about, and this was a pivotal moment where I stuck my head above the parapet and said, "Yeah, all right, then let's do it." And it's not. I mean, these days, unless you're writing a kind of a blockbuster, you know, you don't. You know, it's not a massive money spinner. However, for me, it was can I do this? Can I do this thing? And it will be an incredible calling card for me as an artist and as a kind of a creative person, you know. So I said, yeah, let's do it, you know. So we started mapping out what the content of the book was going to be, and it's a big old beast, you know. I'm really excited about it, and when I look back on it, I mean, I finished it at the end of last year. I mean, probably the last amendments were done to the manuscript in January this year, so pre-lockdown. So it all feels like a bit of a dream. Like it happened last year, and I was doing it, and I was working nights. I was doing sketch commissions. I was doing my day job in the agency, and I was doing the book, you know. And actually, when I read back on it, I go, wow, did I actually write that? It feels like somebody else wrote it, you know. So it was a really interesting process for me to go through, to prove that I could do it. And then, you know, what do I do? I'm almost like going, well, what do I do next? I mean, the book comes out in August. So you know, you better get. I think it is available for pre-order, but it'll be in bookstores in August this year.
Well, I'm going to come and pick my copy up and get it signed, and we'll have a little tot in that fabulous pub that I messaged you, because which pub were that? You'd drawn a pub, it was fabulous, and I said I'm going to come and drink with you there.
Oh yes, the Albion, yes.
2 or 3 people saw that and messaged me saying, you've got to go there. It's amazing. It's amazing.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
They've just reopened. They've just reopened.
Have they? Yeah, everything's just starting to reopen round here. It seems it's a little bit surreal going back out and being with people. I guess that's the problem a lot of people are having, isn't it? So finally, because that has been absolutely, I mean, I know you and I'm fascinated by how it all works. I mean, that's just been amazing. But there'll be loads of artists starting out and designers starting out. What advice have you got to those people? In fact, for anybody who wants to do what you've done?
Well, it's a hard industry sometimes. Our world, it's very competitive, and whether you're an artist or whether you're a designer or whether you're somebody who wants to, you're a creator, a copywriter, or a photographer. I think you've just got to be. I think you've just got to be focused on where you want to go. I think I see a lot of people kind of, aimlessly kind of plotting a course. I think you've got to have a clear idea. I'm not one of these people that goes, I've got a 5-year vision for where I want to be. That I'm not sure that my personal outlook is. I don't really do that. I like to have a clear idea of what makes me happy and what's going to fulfill me. And then I try and plot that course. And you've got to be open and flexible. You've got to take opportunities that come along. I think you've got to put yourself in positions where things do happen. And I think it's been hard. Obviously, it's been hard over the last few months anyway with what's been happening with lockdown. So I think that's added a layer of complexity over everything. But I think you've got to, if you're a young artist setting out, you've got to be sketching every day. You've got to be creating that content. Get on social media, start follow other people, get seen. I think socials are a platform that can work for anybody, whether you're an artist or a photographer or whatever. Somebody will see your work on social media, and it's a free platform, but you've got to dedicate the time to it. It's not something that it's free in terms of you don't have to pay for it, but it's not free in terms of the amount of time you have to dedicate. So Instagram has been the bedrock of my sketching profiling career. I mean, I wouldn't have the book without Instagram. The publishers saw my work, and they gave me that job off the back of that. So use technology to your kind of your best advantage, and just be, you've got to be determined. You've got to go in and work somewhere for free. If you go and do an internship, you should get yourself into the right situation, and if you impress somebody, they'll go, well, we do need somebody, so you could do that job for us. So I always remember there was one guy, you remember him, Nicky, from back in the old days at Attic, a guy called James Channer, Charlie.
Do you remember Charlie?
Yeah, so he I'll never forget, and this is the advice I always give to people setting out, is he came as an intern, right? He knocked on the door and said, look, can I work for free? And I went, yeah, all right. Yeah, we'll give you a week and see if you're any good, and we'll let you have an internship. And he was good, and he did everything. He made everybody's cups of tea. He went to the sandwich shop. He helped everybody out, and he turned into Mr. Indispensable, right? We weren't paying him a penny. His dad was funding him. He was sleeping on somebody's sofa in Huddersfield. And guess what happened? One of our guys had to go to work in New York, and we had a slot. So I said, Charlie, do you want to join the job? And he's like, yeah, I'd love it. And then he started working, and all the account managers loved him because he was just the nicest guy possible. All the other designers could look at him and go, oh, Charlie's charming, and he would just be charming the pants off everybody. And then we had this thing where we used to swap people from office to office, so we'd do exchanges. So there was an exchange with a guy came from New York office, Mike Spoljaric came from New York to Huddersfield, and we sent Charlie across to New York. And guess what happened? Charlie became Mr. Indispensable in New York, and he became the go-to guy in the studio for all the accountants. They go, can you just do me this job? His attitude was off the scale. It was off the scale. And then a week later, I got a call from Jim Moran, who ran the New York office, and he just said, listen, Phil, I want Charlie in New York. I want Charlie. He said, he's amazing. Can I have him? I mean, I couldn't say no. Do you know what I mean? So, and then now Charlie's a musician, right? He works with the Strokes. He lives in Soho in New York. He's married to an art dealer, right? He's just a little kid from a council estate in Leeds that just had the right attitude. He was in the right place. He made it happen for himself, and fair play.
Yeah, you're right. And it's all those things, and it is the focus, because these days, unfortunately, because we get so much negative stimulation from everywhere, you know, people do get knocked over fairly quickly. And you won't know it, and we all, you know, and thank you God. What happened at Attic changed my life. Me and you working together was the beginning of all this, even though I didn't realise it at the time. But I'll tell you what I used to do that you probably wouldn't know. And I'm looking, because normally I have a notepad on my thing. It's in my upstairs office. But in my little drawer in that downstairs office, I had a notepad, and I used to write down the companies that I wanted to work for and that I wanted to get meetings with. And do you know what? So I'd put Nike, Diageo. There were a big government agency that we worked with. I can't remember who they were, but I know that they spent a lot of money with us. And all those people, they were household names. It was absolutely ridiculous that, you know, Nicky, who spoke like this and knew nothing about design, could be sat with some of the biggest creative directors, marketing directors on the planet. But I did it. I'll tell you what worked for me, and that is I became the girl who got into the people on the list. And 9 out of every 10 names that were on that list we got into. And that's why I was so excited about it, because I became the girl that did that. And there's many dimensions to success. And absolutely what you've just said about Channa, absolutely correct. But I bet if we sat him down and said somewhere, what picture in your mind and your art did you have of your life when you got to however old he is, he would say something the same. It's not about, for me, about having a massive business plan, because they can go tits up. It's about having a picture in your mind of who you're going to become. And it worked for me. I think it's a multi-dimensional thing. But if you take one little bit of it out, it all falls on its ass.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think having that picture and having that vision of what you'd like to, who you'd like to be, is really important. And I think that helps drive the path that you go down.
Yeah, and it makes it so as you can't be knocked over, because that person that you're going to be can't be knocked over. Well, is there anything else that you want to tell us before you go? That's been absolutely bloody marvellous. I knew that it would be.
Thank you, Nicky. No, I really enjoyed it. I think it's always interesting trying to articulate what goes on in your head, you know, because sometimes I think you kind of you downplay it sometimes. I think, you know, as a creative person, you sort of, you know, you just kind of assume that everybody else can do what you can do. And that was the biggest personal insight for me, was actually writing the book, and I'm trying to articulate how I do what I do. Because often, you know, there's a lot of things that go unsaid, you know, from a creative standpoint, and you know, that was the most rewarding thing for me personally, and that's why I'm excited to see what people think when they read the book.
Which millions will, I'm sure. Well, thank you. I'm going to put all your details up at the end so anybody can contact you. And honest to God, with all of my heart, thanks very much. Brilliant. Well, that's it for another week. Hope you took something from that. Do you know what the thing is? If you just take one sentence that actually you learn something from, or that makes you feel better, it's worth watching. If you liked it, subscribe down here. Even if you didn't like it, subscribe down here. And I'll see you next week. Take care until then. And again, thank you.